The drive took only 15 minutes to reach the hospital Ksho Jiamu was staying in. Ksho Wanli and Henroshu were probably busy, for they hadn't yet made it yet. Lu Jinian and Ksho Jiamu's relationship was always very good. When Qiaoanhao asked if he wanted to go upstairs to see him, Lu Jinian thought about it for a moment and nodded. He parked the car in the hospital's underground parking lot, locked the car, and followed Qiaoanhao in. The nurse taking care of Ksho Jiamu was waiting for Qiaoanhao in the first floor hall. When she saw her enter, she immediately took her upstairs. As they walked, she described how Ksho Jiamu woke up. Today, at around 6 o'clock, Mr. Ksho moved. Ever since Mr. Ksho moved last time, he would move a little every day, but tonight, he moved quite often. We didn't think much of it, but when I came back from the restroom just now, I noticed that Mr. Ksho's eyes were actually wide open. Following the nurse's description, Qiaoanhao and Lu Jinian stepped into the hospital room. It was just as she had described. Ksho Jiamu lay in bed with an IV attached to his arm. His eyes were open, staring at the ceiling, as though he was thinking of something. Even though there was no love or blood relation between them, to Qiaoanhao, Ksho Jiamu was like her biological brother, a brother who had protected her ever since she was young. Especially after her parents had passed away, Ksho Jiamu really doted upon her. So when she saw Ksho Jiamu, who was unconscious for so long, open his eyes, a hint of excitement inexplicably came over her. She rushed over to his bedside without a second thought and stared at Ksho Jiamu for a long time. After confirming her reflection in his eyes, she then called out, "Brother Jiamu." Ksho Jiamu stared at her with a lifeless expression, as though she was a stranger. His look was blank and unresponsive. Qiaoanhao was frightened by the emptiness in his gaze and continued to call out, "Brother Jiamu." Then she carefully and gently asked again, "Brother Jiamu, you don't recognize who I am?" When Ksho Jiamu heard Qiaoanhao's last words, his eyes finally moved. He stared at her with a glossy eyes. Qiaoanhao held her breath as she looked at Ksho Jiamu. She didn't dare say a word, her eyes filled with anticipation. Ksho Jiamu looked at her for a long time, then forced his hand to touch hers. He wanted to hold it, but he didn't have the strength to do so. In the end, all he could do was stretch his lips into a slight smile. As if it required a lot of energy, he spit out two murmured words, "Kiao, Kiao." Suddenly, Qiaoanhao's tears fell and she tightly grasped Ksho Jiamu's hand. She was so emotional, she couldn't really speak. "Brother Jiamu, you're finally awake. You don't know just how you scared me. Brother Jiamu, I thought you'd never wake up again." Lu Jinian, who had followed Qiaoanhao into the hospital room, saw this scene and only felt an abundance of needles stabbing into his heart. The hand Qiaoanhao held Ksho Jiamu with shook for a long while, before she remembered Lu Jinian. Then she raised her hand to wipe away her tears. With a red nose, she moved away and said to Ksho Jiamu, "Brother Jiamu, Lu Jinian is here too."